I mean, what do you even say after watching that? In all my years, after watching all of these games, I don't know if I've ever seen a team implode the way that Iowa State did today. I mean, oh my.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Nick Marvitz. Thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day, or in this case, first listen post-game. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we are talking about the collapse that was Iowa State's attempt at beating BYU. It was ugly. We'll break that down in the first segment. Then we're going to talk about maybe we need to take a closer look at Rocco Becht in the second segment. We'll take a look at his day today against BYU. Obviously, had a rough stretch of the last few games. And then finally, we're going to have a final thought segment. We're going to talk about the defense. We're going to talk about what happened really in the second half, more specifically, where does Iowa State go from here? I can't wait to dive into all that and more. But first, this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Iowa State loses to BYU. BYU 41, Iowa State 27. It sounds a lot uglier than it was, but then at the exact same time, maybe it doesn't sound ugly enough. I'm going to be honest. Let's talk about it. Actually, first thing I want to say this right off the bat. I'm going to say this sentence, and then I am not going to say another thing about it, okay? Because it doesn't matter. But I am going to get this off my chest. BYU got away with a lot in this one. Period. End of story. We're moving on, okay? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. But also at the same time, does it matter? No, because it wasn't called. Doesn't matter. All right. Going into this one, I was relatively nervous. I'm going to be honest. This one we talked about all week was a must-win game for Iowa State. Obviously, for reasons of the when talking about their record, they need to keep the loss column at 2. Right? They can't go to a 3-loss team and expect to be in the Big 12 championship. But for bigger reasons, Iowa State has to win this game if they are the Big 12 contender that they thought, or that I thought they might be at the beginning of the season. Right? This is a game that even if Iowa State was undefeated, right? If it was undefeated BYU takes on undefeated Iowa State at home, this is one that you would win. This is a game that a conference champion contender would win. So beyond the record, I needed to see it. That's kind of what it came down to. Did this team still have it? If we just ignored the record, did they still have it in their back pocket? For the first 27 minutes, 28 minutes, yeah, they did. They looked really good. But I don't know if I've crashed harder than I did in the last 33 minutes or so of this game. That was ugly. Let's talk about the start. Iowa State, first play from scrimmage. 75 yards. Rocco Becht, Brecht Askelson. Are you kidding me? That was unreal. Great way to start the game. 9 seconds. Bloop. Drop in the bucket. See you later. Brett Eskelson down the sideline, kind of been the deep shot guy all season long for Iowa State. Feel good party. Jack Trice is bumping. We'll talk about that in a minute. BYU answers with a touchdown of their own. It was quick. I mean, that 2:32 there. So, I mean, we're talking less than 3 minutes already, 7-7. I knew this was going to be a game where Iowa State would have to score points. I didn't feel too bad about it. We go out, 11 plays, 57 yards, field goal. Okay? Obviously, we will get to what happened on that specific drive in the second segment. But you feel good that Kyle Conradi's out there. You feel good you can still score points, even when you're not getting in the end zone. Vibes are still high. You force a 3-and-out. You go score a touchdown. Now the score is 17-7. And after forcing BYU to punt, your next 2 plays look like a 28-yard run from Sama and a 24-yard pass from Rocco to Bramer. Okay? And I remember that pass because it was the one-handed catch. And I remember doing the Tyrese Halliburton Selly. And as I turned around, basically, because they went like fast. They were like, get on the line, throw it. Here we go. Immediately, ball's going the other direction. And that was really the point in this game where that was kind of the point. I'm not going to lie. That was kind of the end of this game. Crazily enough, which is wild to say. There was a little bit of redeeming left in this game yet for Iowa State, but not much. Not much, because, yeah, they throw that pick. BYU comes away with a field goal. Instead of 24-7, it's 17-10. Still a very manageable game for Iowa State. As they go down, they score a touchdown. but they apparently leave too much time left on the clock. They give it back to BYU with 1:45, and that's enough for BYU to go down and score a touchdown. And I think at that point was where it was officially over. BYU goes into the half 17-24, and they get the ball back coming out of the half. They make it a 4-point game with a field goal, and the rest of the way for Iowa State, their drive chart looks like punt, field goal, interception, on downs, and then the last interception was not even, it didn't matter. But yeah, that's abysmal. That is a fall off unlike anything I have. It's hard for me to even really wrap my head around how hard. I mean, the interception to make it 24-7, the momentum was so heavily on Iowa State's side. It was ridiculous. I have in here at one point, it was four penalties and 27 yards to 0 penalties, 0 yards. Iowa State was winning it that way. They were winning on third down. BYU was looking at an average of like 13 yards to go on third down. Iowa State was looking at like roughly 3.8. It got all the way up to 6 penalties for 37 yards without Iowa State having one. Iowa State had the most yards in the first half. Rocco Becht had most yards in the first quarter. Most yards in the first quarter allowed by BYU since 2019. They're throwing out these stats left, right, and center. And let me say this, I've got this written down right here, starting to get fired up thinking about it because we were literally rolling against one of the best teams in the Big 12, and we'll talk about the fall off here in a second. But for a second there, everyone was falling forward. All the tackles, you're falling forward. Every hit was a big hit on defense. Sama turned into Air Sama on a play that he didn't even need to. That was just that play in and of itself, to me, was the epitome of this team for that first, 27 minutes, basically first half. But I'm not going to include that. How do you score in 80 seconds and you include that in a team playing well? So ignoring that, 28 minutes even. Everyone was playing loose. Everyone was playing carefree. That was fun football. That was aggressive. It seemed like everyone was on the same page. It's like one of those when you're winning, you're having fun type of situations. Once it fell off, I mean, it was like falling off a two-story building. Like, what are you going to do? Grab the side window and pull yourself back up? No, you're just falling to the ground. Like, there is no Griswold family vacation hanging on by your coat on the eaves spout, whatever it is, the gutter. No, you're just falling to the ground, into the bushes, if you're lucky. I have never seen a team fall off harder. And really, it makes me wonder, and we'll probably talk about this more in the third segment, but Iowa State was playing almost perfectly, pretty close to perfectly up until that interception. Obviously, we'll talk about Rocco Becht in the throw the throw that led to a field goal, essentially, on the second drive in the second segment here. But up really pretty much perfectly. Is that what Iowa State needed to be? Were they capable of playing at that level? I would say no. Because it seemed like as soon as something was off, then everything was off. Everything went down the pipe. We were cooked, chopped. Unk, I think, even is an applicable term there. It was ugly, man. Iowa State, I thought honestly, after for the first 28 minutes, even with a few not great plays, with the pick in there, if you include that, even with the field goal situation, I thought if Iowa State can just, and you could feel the momentum shifting, but if Iowa State can just basically replicate this half in the second half, they are, in fact, a Big 12 level team. Like, they can win a Big 12 championship. That they are capable of that. Do they need the ball to bounce their way? Yes. Do they need to get better between now and then? Yes. But they are capable of it. Whether or not they'll even get the chance is a totally different story. But they are capable. And then they couldn't keep it up. That's like running I'm trying to think of like the best analogy, but taking like a wooden wagon and sending it down a cliff at 90 miles an hour. Like, at some point, the wheels are just going to fly off. Like, they're held in by wooden stakes. They're not very safety proof, right? At some point, Iowa State just wasn't able to play at that level, and BYU was. And BYU was able to weather the storm early and keep themselves in this game. I'm going to leave the sentence I said at the beginning in your minds, but I'm not going to repeat it. That being said, let's talk about Rocco Becht. We need to have a conversation. We're having it right here, right after this on Locked On Cyclones. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's, moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's singular moment that moved the game forward, in my opinion, was a 75-yard touchdown from Rocco Becht to Brett Eskilson. After a bye week and 2 straight losses prior, there was not a ton of hope around this Iowa State football team. But to come out against BYU and throw a 75-yard, basically Hail Mary to the end zone was a good feeling for Cyclone fans everywhere. And so that is single-handedly enough to give it that moment, in my opinion. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Iowa State loses to BYU in quite ugly fashion, if I do say so myself, here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a name that everyone talks about all the time whenever you're talking Iowa State football, which it does make sense. The name that we talk about is Rocco Becht. Okay, going into this season, talked about as one of the best quarterbacks in all of Big 12, maybe in all of college football. I know I had that conversation. We are now having the conversation of who is Rocco Becht, really? What's going on in Ames, but also in Colorado, in Cincinnati? Rocco Becht started this season really solid. Has not looked great over the last 3 weeks. In this one against BYU, 24 of 36, 311 yards, a touchdown, and 3 picks. The 3 picks is ugly. Keep in mind the third pick was at the end of the game. There are moments, it's a difficult one because, arguably they should have been in the end zone, but you had a Bramer hold. So he shouldn't have really been in a situation to throw that ball to get that third pick. That's whatever. But I think more than that, I'm going to look past the scoreboard or past the box score a little bit here, because 24 of 36, 311 and a touchdown, I would take that. Then that you add in the 2 picks, I'm going to ignore the third. That's getting a little uglier. But then when you get down to the decisions that Rocco was making, that's where it starts to get kind of ugly. That's where it starts to get a little bit like, ooh, I don't know. Ooh, that's kind of, are we sure about that? What are we? That's okay. Anyway, which one specifically am I looking at? Well, the first one I'd like to look at is the throw from Rocco Becht to Carson Hansen. In the second drive of the game, it ended up leading to the field goal. That was actually, it was Aiden Flora, excuse me. I thought all game that was Carson Hansen. It was Aiden Flora. I believe it was a wheel route up the right sideline from where they were throwing. Just a little bit too much on it. He was wide open. That's fine. You're not going to hit every single throw in a game. He was wide open, but one I can let go. All right. So that was the first one. In a vacuum, that's fine. I'm not too upset by that. The next one, I believe it was on which drive was this on? Because I don't think they scored on this one. It was at the end of the half. Maybe it was the end of the half. No, it was in the second half. Excuse me. It was when Rocco Becht overthrew Chase Sowell. Okay. It was on a long third down, whatever it was, deep shot. Wasn't on target. That's fine. Obviously, you'd like to see that one completed, but that's a tough throw. We're just going to kind of move past that one. And then late in the game, the shot to, I believe it was Brett Eskilson, that we're just going to refer to the first sentence basically that I said on this breakdown. Whatever. Don't leave it up to the refs. But he had Chase Sowell streaking down the sideline wide open on that one as well. And, I don't know the play, so there is a chance that in this specific situation, I can ignore that because there is a possibility that he is just a clear out route on the backside that's not supposed to get open. There's a chance that he's not even a part of that read. I don't know if that's the case or not specifically, but Rocco Becht never looked his way, never threw that ball. Obviously, the pick six was ugly. Obviously, the first interception was maybe even uglier. That's real. And so I bring up all those points to say that maybe Rocco Becht isn't this NFL quarterback that's playing college football that we thought he was. Okay. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, we should bench Rocco Becht. There should be nobody saying that. And I'm not even going to act like I would respect that take. I don't even think that that's fair at all. I just don't think that Rocco Becht is the guy that we can put on everyone on his shoulders. And he's going to win this game, any game, the way we thought he would going into this season. Everyone talked about Rocco Becht as like he can make every throw. He can. He can put game, or you can put the game on his shoulders at the end of the game, fourth quarter. Rocco, you can. I don't think you're going to see the same level of success that we thought. Okay. I don't know what that means moving forward. Does that mean you need to make the reads a little easier? Are we not putting enough blame on the wide receivers? We might not be, but this is a immediate post game. And it's hard not to look at Rocco, because what was going on the first interception? There's no way that wasn't a misconception. There was no way that was not a miscommunication. That was ugly. Just threw it right to the defensive back. I assume he was supposed to run a curl and saw more green pastures in the end zone. I don't know what was happening there. And then the pick, ugly. Couple balls that just aren't thrown on target. I'm not sitting here saying that Rocco Becht needs to be benched, but I am sitting here saying maybe we need to do an evaluation, at least how much we trust Rocco. Because we have seen over the last few weeks now, balls that just aren't as accurate as maybe we're used to. Or maybe he was getting a little bit of help from receivers that he's not now, right? I think that has to be factored into the game plan. And we'll talk maybe a little bit about game plan offensively. I thought for the most part this one was solid. But there was one play in particular while we're on the topic of game plan. This has nothing really to do with Rocco specifically, but Taylor Mauser, what are we doing on 3rd and 2? 3rd and 2 in BYU territory. What should we do here? I literally said, we better not run sprint out. What do? We run sprint out to the short side of the field. And to make matters better, the short side of the field is to the left. So Rocco Becht is effectively left with only one situation where he's able to run it. He's basically running that. It's not really a pass play anymore. I don't know why that decision was made. It's not really the point of this segment. Look, Rocco Becht, I still trust him. I still believe in him. And I am not going to sit here and say he should be benched. Looks like for the rest of the on the season, I think this must be old because it says he's got 3 here. He's got 16, 22, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks, 68.6 QBR. He had 3 picks in this one. So that's not right. But not a bad season. And I'm not saying we can just maybe we direct snap to Hansen every play. It's not what I'm saying. But I do think it's valid to have thoughts and concerns of what is going on at quarterback. Do we need to change something scheme-wise to make things maybe a little bit easier between the quarterback and the wide receivers, or for just the quarterback, or for just the wide receivers? I think that is a valid concern, a valid question to have, because we're just not seeing the production we need to, right? If you don't throw that pick, even if you just put that pick in a vacuum, if you don't consider the rest of the game, that pick, I would go so far as to say that pick lost the game for Iowa State. I would go so far as to say that. Now, of course, that's not true, but if Iowa State is up 24-7 as opposed to 17-10, it's a much different game. Much different. It's not even close. It's a totally different game. The best thing BYU can do in that situation is come down and make it 14-24. If they score a touchdown, it becomes a 2-possession game as opposed to kicking a field goal to make it a 7-point game. That's a huge difference. That pick on its own, I think, is valid to have questions, right? And then you look at the pick 6, and that was when the door was blown off. That was the end of the game, essentially. So something has to change from a scheme standpoint. We're not going to bench Rocco. Okay, we're not gonna move on. He's still our guy. He's still very good. Something has to change, though, to make something a little bit easier or a little bit clearer. Something is not up to snuff. In the last few weeks, especially, looked pretty good in the beginning of the season. There were a few throws at the beginning of the season I thought that could have been more accurate, but you're not going to ever throw 100% accuracy. You're just not. And I think Tom Brady was the guy who said he threw maybe 20% of his passes on exactly where he wanted to over his career. You're not going to put every ball exactly where it needs to be, but you do need to. That's kind of your job at some point. That you do have to put it at least in a zone, in a safe zone. So I don't know what needs to change. If it's the scheming between the two, scheming of what we're asking Rocco to do, scheming of what we're asking wide receivers to do. At this point, the Big 12 championship hopes are over. So now we can maybe play for next year as far as teaching a system. I don't know what the move is, but something does have to change if you want this offense to get a little bit better through the air. overall, I thought it was a good day on offense. I didn't think it was a bad day, just not good enough against a very good BYU team. Few final points to wrap up today's wrap-up show. Don't go anywhere. It's coming right here after this. It's the weekend. Iowa State just fell to BYU, but it is time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Iowa State, I think I'm going to have to go with Carson Hansen, who had 16 carries and 152 yards, 2 touchdowns along at 65 against BYU. He certainly showed up big, and he showed up big time for Iowa State. Just like Carson Hansen showed up for Iowa State in a big way. DoorDash delivers on your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little bit something riding on the action. And whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Iowa State falls to BYU in ugly fashion. Just straight up disappointing. Not a fun one. Terrible fashion. 41-27. BYU pulls ahead, advances to 8-0 on the season. Iowa State falls to 5-3 on the year, 2-3 in the Big 12. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You might notice I'm not as fired up as I was maybe the last 2 weeks. The Cincinnati game was probably the most mad I've been in a long time. I'll be honest. That one was ugly. Why? Because I felt at that point that this team was still a Big 12 title contender. Absolutely. I really thought they were. We knew Cincinnati was going to be good. We knew they were going to be a problem. But man, if I thought that Iowa State was anything besides one of the top teams in the Big 12, I really did think that they were legit. They were awesome. And at that point, obviously, too, you got some injury concerns, but I had no reason to doubt them at that point. So I was pretty hurt by that one. A lot of mistakes. Just didn't look like Iowa State football. Then you go against Colorado, a team you should have beat, a game you should have won. You don't get it done. There's definitely some anger there, but for the most part, I mean, it's just like some days you don't have it. And Iowa State did not have it against Colorado. This one, you might notice I'm pretty calm because I think in the last 33 minutes of this one, Iowa State showed who they really are. I think Iowa State showed what they're capable of in the first half, but they showed what they are at their core in the second. And I know that's probably a little bit gloomy for some of you, and I agree. I don't love thinking that, but I have no reason. It really, the best way for me to put it was the first 27 minutes. I didn't even feel like an Iowa State fan. It was amazing. It was joyful. It was triumphant. It felt like everything was going our way. Huge gashing run plays. We weren't making mistakes. It was gorgeous. I mean, it was like when you're floating around, frolicking through the fields of flowers or whatever, and the sun is just, glowing just perfectly. You're on top of a hill. Gravity is half as much as it is normally. You're floating in your beautiful dress, and then all of a sudden it becomes normal and it's rainy instantly, and you're like laying on top of this muddy pile of flowers. The scene from any movie ever. That's what happened. It was like, oh yeah, by the way, this is still Iowa State. You're still watching the Cyclones play football. That's what it kind of happened a little bit in that second half. Look, I tweeted this out at Nick_Marv on Twitter. I have never in my life seen from any team across college football, high school football, NFL football, college or Canadian football, Australian football. I have never seen a more special teams play than Benny Ngoye going and stepping on the football on a punt return, man. That is why I hold my breath. Every single punt return, punt, kickoff, kick return. I don't know what it is about Iowa State football and special teams, but they just don't mesh. It's oil and water, man. It never works out, ever. How does that happen? You want to talk about the interception. You want to talk about the pick six. Talk about stepping on an almost dead football. Talk about that. What are we doing? That just doesn't even make any sense at all. That was literally like some higher power being like, this is still Iowa State football. At first, it was like you have to either play at middle the whole game or high and low. And Iowa State chose we're going to play high and hope we get them, but we're still going to have that low in the second half. The second half, I thought the play calling was significantly worse. Whatever was, not necessarily on offense, more so on defense. Whatever was working really for the first, up until the last drive of the first half. Iowa State was rolling. I mean, like I said, BYU was looking at long third downs, average of 13 or so yards on third down to go. That's awesome. We had tons of sacks. I think we maybe had more sacks in this game than we have all year long combined. We had 2 sacks in this game. That was awesome. It was unlike anything I'd probably ever seen. We had a total of 3 tackles for loss. That was electric. Didn't get a pick that I would have liked to have seen. But either way, it just felt like something was off, man. It felt like they changed something. Like they weren't bringing as much pressure. They were like okay with dropping 3 and watching BYU just fly down the field, pick up chunk plays here, there, everywhere. No pressure, not confusing Bear Bachmeier in the second half. It was like they just changed everything. I've never seen a 180 like that. It was in some ways traumatizing. Actually, the only probably other time I've ever seen a 180 like that was the Falcons collapse in Super Bowl 51 against the Patriots. And I do have this right here. If you can read it, it says Patriots. I am a Patriots fan. I remember that one. This kind of felt like that a little bit, but not so much because obviously it was never like Iowa State was. I mean, if they get the touchdown to make it 24-7, then it would have felt a little bit more like that. Not quite as bad as 28-3, but 24-7, that's a pretty big difference. It just really fell off a little bit faster for Iowa State in this one. I guess that's college versus the NFL for you. Look, I think Iowa State is good. They have a chance to beat some teams down the stretch that are, going to be competing for the Big 12 championship game. It won't be Iowa State this year. And we'll have to take a look really when the season winds up. I'm not going to do it yet. But who can Iowa State be next year? Can they get back to where they were last year? I don't know. That's for down the road. But for right now, we saw the last 3 games. Now that I think about it, the last 3 games, Iowa State has played a very good half of football, either the first half or the second half. That's it. Right? Against Cincy, it was the second half. They played really good defense, and they didn't do quite enough on offense, but they played really good on defense. Against Colorado, first half, really good, especially on defense, and then they fell apart in the second. Against BYU, first half, phenomenal. Maybe not so much the full first half, but close to it. Really good first half. Not perfect on offense, the area that I think this team is more capable, but apparently I'm wrong. Really good, and then everything fell apart. And yes, you gave up a pick 6. So really, is it 41? No, you take away 7 points from that, right? What would that be? 36? No, 34? 34? Still gave up 34 points. And I wasn't even worried about it. I was like, you know what? Whatever. They're going to score what they're going to score. We have to respond. And Iowa State was doing it. They were going band for band with BYU for a minute there. They just weren't able to keep up. They could not keep on pace with BYU. So they fall to 5-3. I guess you just look ahead to Arizona State. Fall, for the 3rd straight time. Maybe 4th time's the charm, right? What did you guys think of this one? Let me know in the comments below. If you were at the game, how was the atmosphere? It looked electric for the first half. If you're a BYU fan and you're turning in for the night or chiming in, watching this, how was your experience? I'm very interested, curious to know. Let me know in the comment section down below or at Nick_Marv on Twitter. I'll see you guys on Monday, man. This one's going to be tough. It's tough to stomach. Appreciate y'all. Hit subscribe. Until next time, Cyclone fans. Sayonara.